Well, I hope that put a smile on your face. It was Amy who found this little light of mine in Hebrew, and I just thought how appropriate it was for this fourth day of Hanukkah. The opening words are a prayer for this gathering. Dear God, Spirit of connection and creation, bless this community gathered in hope and love for our world, for one another, and for ourselves. We gather here longing to create a more connected and more just world. Help us to speak our truth with respect. Help us to listen with love. Help us to be patient. Help us to be forgiving. Help us to know that here, as in all human endeavors, mistakes are inevitable and perfection impossible. And oh yes, remind us not to take ourselves too seriously. Amen.
Welcome everyone to this service this morning. If just a couple reminders, remember that we can type in joys and sorrows as we're going along, and I'll summarize them or read them, speak them when we get to joys and sorrows at the end of the service. We continue to offer our financial gifts to sustain the church and the community. You can donate electronically at uumeadville.org. You can mail your checks to the church. And this month's Share the Plate recipient is UU Plan. Also, we have a request from Amy for our Christmas Eve service. If you have any Christmas related photos, nature ones, or family or friends that we could use, would you please send some photos to either Jody at the church or to Amy? And you might see them Christmas Eve. Thanks much.
The light of this chalice reminds us that it is a symbol of all the world's religions. This small light shines to ward off the darkness and welcome back the sun. As we light this chalice, may we be reminded that this light is a symbol that ties us to many faiths, beliefs, traditions, and customs from which our lives are enriched.
We will now recite our unison affirmation of covenant and mission. If you're doing this aloud from home, just make sure you've muted yourself so we don't have a waterfall of sound. Thank you. Our covenant is to be a loving, joyful community that nurtures spiritual growth, promotes compassion, social responsibility, and service in an atmosphere of mutual respect. Our mission is to be a faith community devoted to love and respect, reason and justice. Next is our song, Find a Stillness. And again, if you'd like to sing along with this song, make sure you mute yourself at home. And hopefully we will all find a stillness.
As you listen to the homily, please reflect on the following question for conversation during the breakout rooms. Does the light this time of year affect you? And what do you do about it? Okay. On Friday, for the first time in about a month, I took the dogs for their early morning walk. It felt good to exercise. I hadn't been out of the house, I think, in 3 weeks. And the sun on my face was invigorating. Yesterday, not so much. Today, not so much. The mornings were back to winter bleak, and just that small change in the light made the walk feel that much more of a chore. I guess if you live in the Northeast, you somehow get used to the bleakness, especially in the chill wintertime, or maybe not. I'm very conscious of the light, especially in my special time with the dogs at dawn. I remember telling you a couple of years ago of seeing a pink light, like the light they talk about in Paris, one morning when it was snowing and sunshining at the same time. And then one time there was this wash of fall yellows and orange that just kind of colored the walk in orange and yellow. My morning walks are a time when I contemplate life. It's my time at church, so to speak. I talk to God, more often to myself, plan my days, and of course, voice leave it or let's go, because obviously I have 2 dogs with me. But the light, sun or lack of it, plays a big part in my mood and what I think about as we walk. I've really missed that time of early light and early days these last few weeks. Have you noticed, especially at this time of year, that light, as we mentioned in the chalice lighting, is a symbol of every major religion of the world, and we hear more about light at this time of the year than any other time. Imagine the votive candles at St. Bridget's, the symbols of prayers and wishes of the worshipers, lighting the interior of the church. Think about the 5 Advent candles that we often light and discuss here this time of year. If we're lucky with the clouds, and I think it's December 21st, we might see what scientists imply might be the Star of Bethlehem. Saturn and Jupiter aligned brightly for the first time in 800 years. For Islam, light depicts the first creation and implies, but never depicts God. Allah is understood through reference to light. At mosques throughout the world, the architecture of the building gives special attention to the use of light and how it comes through the windows and openings. Buddha talks about the light of wisdom, radiance, putting others first, and light as the development of the mind. The chalice, a symbol of our Unitarian faith, is a beacon of hope and has become our Unitarian logo, so to speak. And then there are the lights of the Hanukkah menorah. Hanukkah to me is a conundrum. I don't remember very many Hanukkah celebrations growing up. An occasional dance at the temple to raise money, but Hanukkah mostly is a very minor holiday. It's a holiday to celebrate at home, light the menorah, and play games, especially dreidel, a 4-sided top that means to turn. I never did get that right. I never could get it to turn. One side represents that which stands apart. The second side, the wheel of life. The third side, humility. And the fourth, human potential. The Hebrew letters Nun, Gimel, Hai, and Shin are sometimes translated as an acronym for a great miracle happened there, which is really kind of weird because a dreidel originated with the Irish and Romans and made its way to Germany. So over the years, it's basically been interpreted as representing Hanukkah. But at other times, it's translated as a gambling device. None, nothing, gimel, all, high for half, and shin for put in. So you can easily see gambling delighting old and young over the years as they celebrate Hanukkah at home. On the one side, Hanukkah is the story of the Maccabees fighting off the Syrian ruler in 168 BCE. This ruler banned Judaism, destroyed the Second Temple. This story is in the book of the Apocrypha, not the Bible. And what I think is the central miracle of the Hanukkah story, the small jar of oil lasting not one day as it should have, but a full 8 days until a replacement arrives, is said not to have been mentioned until several centuries after the Apocrypha in the Talmud, which is the body of laws, theology, and legend. So the story of Hanukkah is on one hand a nationalistic, we will survive holiday, winning a battle, rebuilding the temple. They don't say very often that 5 of the 6 Maccabees died during the battle, but that's what happened. Only one survived. And on the other hand, it's the story of a miracle of light at a dark time of the year. I prefer the story of the miracle of lights rather than the nationalistic. You need exactly 45 candles to fully celebrate Hanukkah. I have to admit that each year I end up with a leftover mismatch of odd candles because I've forgotten to light the menorah on one or more of the 8 nights. Usually because sunset sneaks up on me and all of a sudden it's 7 o'clock and we're watching Jeopardy. Okay. So Josh and I have discussed this and I looked it up. And so I'm going to give you a little story about how to light the Hanukkah menorah. I have a menorah here. It's a tree of life menorah. I don't know if you can see it. It represents the tree of life. You load a menorah from the right. So this is my right. Maybe it's your left, but it's my right. So you load the menorah from the right and you light the menorah from the left. This happens to be the shamus, the lighting candle. So it's kind of in the wrong place. But you light the menorah so that the newest candle, and this is a replacement for the first night and the second night, and this is a replacement for the second and the third night. This is a replacement candle, and this is a new candle that hasn't been lit before. And that is how you light the menorah. You don't put it out like you do the chalice. You just let it burn down and watch the surface of where it's standing so you don't get wax all over the place. Okay. I hope you can tell that I just love the idiosyncrasies. You know, they found Richard III in a parking lot in Leicester, so maybe they'll find more of the Second Temple and what went on and whether there really was oil or not, but maybe not in my lifetime. But I love the peculiarities of the Hanukkah story. We'll probably never solve the mystery of whether it really happened or didn't, why it's so popular. But I love that the holiday brings light into my life and brightness into the darkness. It's part of my heritage, my DNA, as it were. And I love sharing what the story and the mystery is. Hopefully, it's a tradition that enriches our lives and our moods. Okay. Remember, as we go to breakout rooms, that you're to talk about how life and light affects you. Okay. Thank you.
Welcome back, everyone, from your breakout room. I hope your times together were rich and full. And it's now time for our joys and sorrows. We have several. So first of all, a candle of concern from Deb for her daughter Chelsea and her partner Shayna, both who are ill with COVID. From Dave Anderson, a candle of joy for the life of my mother, Joan Brodegam, who passed away a week ago. Actually, that's from Jane. And Corrine, please say a little prayer for our son Tyler, who is struggling with COVID. I would like to add prayers for so many people. We have now a number of people in our congregation and among the families of our congregation. So for everyone who has or is struggling with COVID and their families and loved one, I'm symbolically lighting a candle. And also for all of us, just to find ways to hold our own light and shine our light for ourselves and for others. This certainly is a time when we all need light. Thank you.
Let's take a short time of silent reflections on the joys and sorrows that we've heard here today, as well as all of those unspoken in our hearts.
And let's finish this morning by extinguishing our chalice. If you've lit your own candle at home, this is your time to do that as well. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we meet again.
Thank you all for coming today. You can take some time and do a coffee hour breakout room with us, or you can just leave. Happy Hanukkah, happy holidays. We'll see you again next week. Thanks for coming.